Morning. So we are going to start by looking at one of the homework problems that you should have done last week. And then we'll get into some new material. So the following example says, let's find real solutions of the following equation. And the equation we have is x squared plus 15x plus 2 times the square root. And under the square root, we have the expression x squared plus 15x. And then outside the square root, we have equals 24. So when we're solving equations, we want to look at what type of equation it is. And I notice that it has a radical in there. So we have a radical equation. And then I have to go through the process of how do I solve that type of equation. And to solve radical equations, first thing that we want to do is we want to isolate one of the radicals. And there's only one in here. So we're going to just isolate that one radical. And so that means I want to get rid of that x squared on this one side. So I'm going to subtract x squared on both sides. I'm going to want to get rid of this minus 15x on both sides, or sorry, plus 15x. So I would subtract 15x on both sides. And so if I do that, I'm left on the left-hand side with two square roots. X squared plus 15x is equal to negative x squared minus 15x plus 24, because none of those are like terms. I could go through and I can divide every term by 2. The thing is, then I have a fraction and I kind of don't want to deal with fractions. So I can bypass that because I know from algebra that if we have two things multiplied together and we raise it to a power, we would raise each piece to that power. And so I'm going to do that when I square both sides to get rid of that radical. So I'm squaring the 2, and that's going to give me back 4. Parentheses, squaring the square root is going to give me back the radicand, what's underneath the radical, which is x squared plus 15x. Then we need to be careful on the other side because we need to distribute negative x squared minus 15x plus 24 all times negative x squared minus 15x plus 24. So we're going to get some huge numbers, it looks like, in here. So let's distribute our 4 to each term on the left-hand side. So 4 times x squared is 4x squared. 4 times 15x, so that gives me 60x, is equal to, and now distributing over here. Grab a calculator. Okay, so negative x squared times negative x squared, this gives me positive x to the 4th. So recall, kind of exponents again, if you have the same base multiplied, you're adding your exponents. And so that's what I was doing there. 2 plus 2 gives me 4. Okay, so then let's do negative x squared times negative 15x. So that would give plus 15x cubed. And then negative x squared times 24 gives me minus 24x squared. Now I need to distribute my negative 15x to both terms over here. So this are all 3 terms over on this second parentheses. So negative 15x times negative x squared, that gives me a plus 15x cubed. Negative 15x times negative 15x, I think that's 625. Let me just make sure. I want to say 625, but I think that's 25 times 25. This is 225. That's plus 225 x squared and negative 15x times 24. So 15 times 24, that's going to give us minus 360x. Now let's distribute the 24 to each term. So 24 times negative x squared is minus 24x squared. 24 times negative 15x, we just saw that was negative 360x. And 24 times 24, that is going to give us plus 576. So let's clean up that one side by combining like terms and then determine what type of equation it is and then solve from there. Excuse me. Okay, so we have 4x squared plus 60x is equal to x to the fourth. So I want to combine all like terms. So we have a 15x cubed plus a 15x cubed. That's going to give me plus a 30x cubed. And then here we have, let's look at the squares. We have a negative 24x squared minus a 24x squared. That's negative 48x squared plus a 225x squared. So let's look at 225 minus 48. And so that's going to give us plus a 177x squared. Now we have a negative 360x minus a 360x gives us a negative 720x. And then the last thing that's by itself is that constant of plus 576. It's not very pretty, is it? Okay, so we want to get everything to one side of the equation. And we can do that by setting it equal to 0. Let's subtract 4x squared on both sides. And let's subtract 60x on both sides. And so doing that, I'm just going to write all the terms on the left-hand side now. I have x to the fourth plus 30x cubed. So 177x squared minus 4x squared, that gives me a 173. So plus 173x squared. Negative 720x minus 60x, that's minus 780x. Plus 576 equals 0. Okay, so I'm looking at this. It doesn't look like I can manipulate it to be a quadratic of form. So we actually need to go back. The only way I know how to do this and to find the zeros is to go back and use information from college algebra. Actually, this is college algebra. We don't have these tools right now to do this. So let me just pause and look at this for a second. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I've approached it this way, and I've come to a halt because I don't know how to solve this without the tools that we haven't learned so far in this class. And so I need to go back and approach this a little differently. And now I see how to do it. So notice what's inside the parentheses, not the parentheses, inside the radical is the same thing. Just put my pen down. Sorry. Okay, so notice right here, this x squared plus 15x is the same thing underneath this radical right in here. And so I'm going to change this as a u substitution. And so let me erase what I've already done so that we can go through and get that started. So our goal actually is to get this in the form of a quadratic. And again, what's underneath the radical is the same thing that's out front, that x squared plus 15x. We want to choose u to be this piece right here. So let's choose u to equal the square root of x squared plus 15x. So basically, in order to get this piece without the square root, we're going to be squaring it. So this piece in here is u squared. Then we have plus 2 times what we chose u to be. So 2 times u equals 24. So it's a quadratic now. We manipulated it to be a quadratic. So let's set it equal to 0. So now we have u squared plus 2u minus 24 equals 0. So this is factorable. There's two numbers that multiply to -24 and add to 2. So 4 times 6. 6 is positive, 4 is negative. So we have u plus 6, u minus 4. Set each piece equal to 0 and solve for u. So we get u is -6 and u is equal to 4. So now we're going to go back and we want to figure out what x is. And so we have two separate equations. We have when u is -6. So we have -6 is equal to the square root of x squared plus 15x. So let's square both sides of the equation to get rid of that radical. So we get -6 squared is 36 is equal to squaring a square root gives us just the radicand, in this case, x squared plus 15x. I notice now, again, I have a quadratic. So to go about solving quadratics, I'm going to set this equal to 0. Let's subtract 36 on both sides. So I have x squared plus 15x minus 36 equals 0. Factor it. There are two numbers that multiply to 36, -36, and add to 15. So let me just think about it. 36, it's not 6 and 6. 2 and 13 is not going to work. Next, actually, that's 26. It doesn't work either. And 12. Except that is going to multiply and give us, that would multiply to give us 36, but that doesn't add to give us a positive 36. So 9 and 4 doesn't look like that works either. 36 and 1's not going to work. So I don't see any factors that are going to actually work to give us that. So now we got to even go back further and solve it a different way. And we can use our quadratic formula. So x is equal to -b, so -15, plus or minus the square root of 15 squared, which is 225. Minus 4 times a, which is 1 times 36, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So we have 225 minus 4 times 36. Let's first figure out what 4 times 36 is. And that's 144. So 225 minus 144. Which is 81. So maybe it was factorable. I just didn't see the factors. So now we have x is equal to -15 plus or minus. The square root of 81 is 9 all over 2. So -15 minus 9, that's -24 all over 2, which is -12. Or x equals -15 plus 9 all over 2. So that is -15, that's plus 9 is 6. So 6 over 2 is 3. -3. There we go. I have those up there, 3 and 12. Okay, sorry. Sorry, let me pause. Okay, so those do actually work because if x equals -12 works, this is saying that we could have factored this. I went the long way as x plus 12 times x plus 3. Those two numbers, 12 times 3, that multiplies to give us that positive 36. Should be minus 36 though. Okay, so I'm stuck for a second. I apologize. Okay, so I see where or I was off. And so back here at this stage, before we squared everything, we had a square root is equal to -6. And we can't square something to get a negative number. So this would have no real solutions. And so we would have stopped there for that piece when u was -6. And when we were going to do the same thing that we had done for u equals 4. And so let's put in when u is 4. So 4 is equal to the square root of x squared plus 15x. So we're going to square both sides of our equation. So we get 16 is equal to x squared plus 15x. It's quadratic, so we're going to set it equal to 0. So x squared plus 15x minus 16 equals 0. Factor it. So this would be x plus 16, x minus 1 equals 0. Set each piece equal to 0. So we have x is -16 and x is 1. But unfortunately, we squared both sides while we were solving this. We raised both sides to an even power. So we need to check your answers. We're plugging it back in the original. So when x equals -16. So let's go through. We're going to put in a parentheses wherever we see an x, and then we're going to go back in and replace it with a -16. So we have a x squared, so parentheses squared plus 15. I see an x, so parentheses plus 2 square root of an x squared, so 16 squared plus 15. I see an x, so parentheses. Does this really equal 24? So if I square 16, -16, I get back 256 minus 15 times 16, which is 240, plus 2 times the square root of 256 minus 240. Is this equal to 24? Well, 256 minus 240, that's 16 plus 2. Well, again, 256 minus 240 is 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So that would be a 4 there. Does that equal 24? 16 plus 8 does equal 24. So x equals -16 is a solution. And now we have to do the exact same thing with when x was 1. So if x equals 1, again, we're going to go and put parentheses wherever I saw an x in the original equation. And then we're going to replace wherever we saw parentheses. Inside, we're going to put a 1. So we have x squared. So we're going to have 1 squared plus 15x. So 15 times 1 plus 2 square roots of 1 squared plus 15 times 1 underneath the radicals, that equal to 24. So 1 squared is 1 plus 15 is 16 plus 2 times, well, this is 16 underneath the radical. Is that 24? So 16 plus 2 times 4 is 8. That is 24 again. So x equal 1 is also a solution.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That took me a little longer than I thought it would, and I
That's okay.
apologize. But sometimes we don't see it right away, right? And we approach things differently. But
well, it would have taken me much longer to figure it out by myself. So thank you.
You're welcome.